Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Alison Cooper, a serial entrepreneur who built multiple million-pound businesses. She sold her previous company in 2019. She saw an opportunity in the jewelry market and founded Alicia J Diamonds, which provides gemstone and diamond jewelry, handmade and without a high street markup. Welcome, Alison.
Hello, Ozan. Lovely to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
It's great to have you here. So I think you have a fascinating background that can be an inspiration for other entrepreneurs out there. I would love to learn more. So when did this entrepreneurial streak start?
Actually, I think it probably started when I was very young, when I used to be in the Girl Guides and I used to sell tomato plants to make money for the Girl Guides. So I think I've always kind of looked at ideas of how to make money. And actually, if I think about it, apart from when I was at university, I worked for a big hotel chain. I've never actually worked for anybody. I've always worked for myself. So I was always driven by wanting to do something and build something and make my own money. Definitely.
Well, what was your first business, if you go back? And I ask this with the idea of lessons learned and experiences gained. And sometimes we have to experience a few things to learn. Theoretical knowledge doesn't cut it, so real life experience, I think, is really valuable. So what was your first business with that perspective, and why did you build that business? What did you learn from it?
Yeah, so I did hotel management and catering at university, and then I went to live in Germany. I had a German boyfriend at the time who then I married and became my husband. And he was in the fashion industry, but after about 6 weeks, I realized that working in fashion really wasn't me. I was very much a food person. And I looked at the German market and thought, goodness me, they're snacking products on the go. This is beginning of the 1990s, are really not what the UK market is. And at that time, the UK market was very much prepped, was just kind of getting quite well known. Lots of sandwich manufacturers were starting out, and there was different associations with sandwiches. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to import sandwiches into Germany. I don't know, I just kind of thought to myself,
that's very brave, isn't it, if you take a look back?
Yeah, it was brave, Ozan, because in the UK, the retail was very much ahead of Germany in chilled distribution. We'd got Marks and Spencers and lots of big retailers who were very good at, had distribution networks set up with chilled distribution. And obviously sandwiches need to be chilled. And I then found a UK manufacturer, a big UK manufacturer. I used to import in on Eurostar 3 times a week because the sandwiches had production plus 3 days shelf life. And there was lots of sleepless nights because if the Eurostar got stuck or anything, then we'd miss the onward distribution into the German market. So that really did teach me that you can't take a product, even though Germany wasn't far away from the UK. And that's, I think, where my thinking had slightly gone wrong. And then the other thing that I noticed was in the UK, it was very much at that time talking about yuppies and people who were buying sandwiches. There were definitely younger people.
Fascinating.
And my client in Germany was not the younger person. They all looked at the sandwiches, apart from if they were British and they were working in a British bank or something in Frankfurt. They all went to the vending machines and bought them, and they were very happy that they could have a chicken tikka or a prawn mayonnaise sandwich in Frankfurt. That made them very happy. But a lot of the younger Germans were very much against the product because, number one, they deemed it to be environmentally unfriendly because it was in plastic packaging.
I see.
Obviously,
and this is back in 1990s, right? So
1990s.
Great environmental awareness from those days.
Oh, definitely. And it turned out we did some market research because we were running them on German rail, and our client was the elderly pensioner who didn't have their own teeth. They were eating the sandwiches because they were soft, because the German market was very much driven by freshly made baguettes with fillings, and they found that hard to eat. So it was a completely different demographic of client for German clients who we were serving, not for British in America. And it was very much the type of people that were buying sandwiches in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was eye-opening and did really make me realize that you can't take a blueprint from one country and just airlift it into another country and think it's going to be successful.
I think it has incredible educational value, these kind of endeavors. Even if they go wrong, you still end up winning. That's kind of the beauty of the startup and entrepreneurial game in my eyes.
Yes.
And I think one of the lessons there is, and we can actually almost use this lesson as an analogy, because I think a parallel is in many industries. You build a product with a certain idea of how users would actually use it, but then they use it in a completely opposite way, and it just goes to show you cannot be overly rational in terms of seeing what the people want, but rather you have to be more empirical. Ask people, ask the customers, and really have your ear to the ground in terms of what people want.
Yes, definitely. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, you are very, I mean, as a person, I'm very creative, and I like to go into industries, and I think I like to take a different take, so slightly disrupt what's gone on in the past. But then you also do need to do some research. And I was, in my early 20s when I ran that business, and I just became blown away what was going on in the UK market, and thought, right, that it's going to be the same in Germany. And then unfortunately, we then had BSE, and then one of the German TV programs, radio, TV and radio, picked up one of the sandwiches out of the vending machines in Frankfurt, and then very kindly put it on TV that evening. And then about a week later, I'd lost most of my clients. And, we could actually prove that it wasn't British beef in there, it was Argentinian beef. But the UK manufacturer wasn't that bothered about proving it. As far as they were concerned, they knew that they didn't want to get into a kind of like a thing on TV or radio demonstrating that they could prove it. So yeah, that was then that really was a learning, the first business.
It's definitely a lesson. Would your friends say you're a very courageous and adventurous person?
Yeah, definitely think courage is one of my attributes, and I think I live my life like nothing is a challenge. And I also think that if people tell me that you can't do something, then I think, well, I'll try and I'll prove that you
Challenge
can.
accepted.
Yeah, yeah, I do, definitely. I like a challenge. I mean, when I started my next business, when I came back to the UK, I had people say to me, but Alison, how are you going to put bakery products into the aviation industry when you're not a baker? And I thought, well, I don't need to be a baker. I just need to understand how supply chains work, and how packing works, and how the logistics industry all fits into the aviation industry. And as long as I master that and I know how all of that works, finding the product is secondary for me.
It all
And
starts with
now,
observing the need, I guess. So
yes.
I think that's a fascinating story, and I would like to details. But before we go into them, so what was the first moment of insight where you saw, okay, there is a need in the aviation industry, and what was that second business?
So I'd lived obviously in Germany for about 13 years by the time I came home, and I had really enjoyed eating German bread. It was a very different eating experience to kind of like the white toast bread, which we were still really experiencing in the UK when I came back. And I just remember coming back from Germany and eating some bread on the plane, thinking this is actually just not a great eating experience. I could do something here, and that was it really. I knew that a lot of the UK retailers were sourcing bakery products in Europe. All the croissants were coming in from Belgium and France and places like that, and then the retailers in the UK were baking them off in store. So I knew that the UK retailers were already moving into that par-baked sauce in Europe and finish it off in store. I thought that's exactly what we can do in the travel industry. So it was like sourcing European different types of bread, from Italy, from France, Germany, Belgium, and then mixing them in ovenable film to go into business class and first class on board. And it proved very successful because the breads actually regenerated on board a lot better than maybe a piece of white bread that hadn't got that many ingredients in. Yeah.
Perhaps the active yeast has something to do with that.
Yes, yeah, definitely. They have different fermentation processes on some of the European breads than we do in the UK.
So what happened to that business in the coming years?
Yeah, so it took me 15 years from start to finish to sell it. I actually sold it in 2017 fully. I
Oh,
got to
wow.
12 million turnover in 10 years, and it was very, very hard, Ozan, to build it because number one, we were in perishable foodstuffs. Number two, we were in the aviation industry. Number three, we were shipping lots of product around the globe. And every time I went to raise some money to scale the business, it was that question, it goes into the computer system, doesn't it? And it just put up too many red flags. So
Not the easiest of combinations you have there.
yeah, no, it was really, really hard. I mean, I used confidential invoice discounting so that we could, we'd raise an invoice and then the next day we could pull so much of that invoice down. But because in the aviation industry, even though you're dealing with different carriers, different airlines, you still deliver to a few caterers at different airports. And so I was always over our concentration levels. So therefore, couldn't actually pull down what we thought we could pull down the next day. So it just became very, very hard to scale because we just lack of working capital to finance stock. So I think one day I just came to the realization that I wanted to carry on, but I had no more bricks left in my house in Windsor to give to the bank. And so we decided to look for an investor. So I went to a smaller mergers, acquisitions, like boutique company that helped me find an investor. And I actually had found an investment with my largest client, which was Emirates at the time, part of the Donata Group. And they bought 80% and I kept 20%. And then I did a 5-year earnout. And during that earnout, I built it from 12 million turnover to 44 million turnover.
That's an incredible story. Heartfelt
Yeah,
congratulations, Alison.
thank you. Yeah.
It sounds easy for some people, but I know it as a fellow entrepreneur. It's incredibly difficult, and the difficult part is it's just a marathon, isn't it? It doesn't take.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what people I think are most frequently mistaken about. And I know you're a part of a few entrepreneur groups, and you have a lot of connections and met with entrepreneurs from all different backgrounds. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but in my personal view, sometimes this Silicon Valley picture of startups have actually they have done a great service by motivating people, and
Yeah.
sometimes like the greed is good type of a thinking, and people try to find solutions, create great products with the motivation that they're gonna become rich. So it has a positive side, but on the other hand, the expectations are set so astronomically high. People expect their businesses to take off and be multi-million pound,
Yes.
dollar, euro businesses in 2 years, 3 years, sometimes less than that. And when it doesn't happen, they get that they lose motivation, they lose self-respect, they lose self-love, and they believe in themselves. They lose their courage, and that's like what we talked about, right? You have that quintessential courage which pushes you, and
Yes.
sometimes people lose that courage, and I think it's a shame people lose that. And I think that's the moment where the entrepreneurial journey ends, when you lose that courage. So it goes back to setting the expectations right. Sometimes a small business, a startup, whatever you want to call it, it's going to take 10 years, 15 years.
Yes. Totally. Yeah. 100% agree. I think it's all happened with the tech, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I meet. They spend their life raising money, and I
Mm.
sit in presentations looking at valuations, thinking, but they actually aren't making any money, and they're telling me that their business is already worth millions. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely very different to when I started in the 1990s. But for the people who are listening to this, who have a smaller company, I can only impress you. You just have to believe in yourself. It's about determination, being resilient, having courage, and believing in your product or your service. And we all have setbacks. You'll have days where you think you'll climb in K2, but you just have to find the way to go back the next day and carry on. And I think, though, if you've got those attributes and you combine those attributes and you're passionate about your product or your service, you will be successful.
So you've had the chance to work with different industries, some hospitality there.
Yes.
I remember you mentioned you were educated in that area as well. So my next question is kind of, what do you think about luxury brands in general compared to other type of brands? Because I think luxury brands have a different relation. It's on the one hand it's more emotional. On the one hand, it's a different segment of the market who can afford luxury products. Some entrepreneurs swear by them as good ways to grow a business, but also there are opposing arguments. Looking at the industries and different markets in general, where does the luxury brands, the luxury market sit in your view of the world?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, definitely my new business is focused on luxury, and it is a very different market to move in. The way the social media works, marketing, branding, the amount of money that you need to invest in getting your brand on the map and getting noticed is very, very different to the business I ran before, which was obviously B2B, and this is now B2C. Luxury for me is very important. I mean, there's definitely a segment of society that they will only, engage with luxurious or in the luxury market brands. It's probably, say, harder to navigate, Ozan, than a business where you're putting in maybe a commodity product. That's what I'm feeling, and there seems to be certain gatekeepers, and there's certain amount of snobbery attached. And are they going to let new players in? That's what I'm finding. It's that
more kind of a private club vibe.
Yes, yeah, definitely networking, definitely. Certain brands of luxury brands have existed for hundreds or many years, and they gatekeep who's allowed into that space. So you very much, I think it's a matter of navigating everything that's gone on in the past, understanding who the decision makers are, and then finding ways to infiltrate that market. Yeah, it is. I personally underestimated how much time and money we would have to spend on marketing and social media and content. Totally underestimated the amount of time that would take.
I see. That's interesting, and I'd like to go in that direction if you wouldn't mind. So you've built Alicia J Diamonds. How long has it been since the business started? And if any number you would like to share with us, I don't want to pressure you, but any number you're comfortable sharing with us, just know it's really useful for the other entrepreneurs there. So what do you mean when you say we've underestimated the amount of marketing pounds to be spent? How much did you spend, just as a ballpark figure, perhaps? And where's the business now?
When we started the business, I started it just kind of the website just launched just before COVID, really. And I had done some pieces of jewelry for people like in the 18 months prior to that. I'd obviously traveled to the Middle East a lot over the years that I'd been in the aviation industry, and I used to treat myself to some nice diamonds and pieces of jewelry. And when people knew I was finishing, they were like, "Oh, you won't be able to get my Christmas presents any in the future for my wife or my girlfriend." And I thought, hang on a minute, is there a business here? So I obviously knew that I needed some education because all of my knowledge was like self-learned. So I went off and did my Gemological Institute of America exams, and then started to just, if somebody would ask me about an engagement ring or something, I would help them in the selection process, sourcing the diamonds and getting the jewelry made. And then COVID hit, and I thought, hang on a minute, everything is now going to go online. So maybe we invest some money now and put a website in and really get Alicia J out there. So that's what we did. So my first mistake was not really understanding about UX journeys on websites. So I think I'd say our first website, first iteration was beautiful. I had lots of people say, "God, it's lovely. You've got beautiful photography and it's really gorgeous." But I just didn't take
Does
into
it
account.
convert? It's very
The UX
numerical.
journey.
It's very data driven.
Yeah. So that was something I hadn't had to my previous life in the aviation industry in B2B. That was, we used to have websites, but it wasn't all data driven with people. So then we kind of left the website running, but then started another piece of work where we started again with the website, which we launched just before Christmas. Got UX consultants in. Obviously, it all comes with prices attached to it, and relaunched the whole website with an internet shop on. I didn't actually want to, when I started the business, I wanted it to be a truly bespoke service where we met people in person or online, and then discussed with them the piece of jewelry that they'd like to have made. But we have now gone down the route of putting an internet shop on, and that was partly when we did UX journey research. It was building trust with potential clients, that they could see that somebody had been onto the shop, they put a Trustpilot review on, and then they thought, oh, okay, this does really exist. It's not a scam. I think the first website looked beautiful, but potentially people looked at it and thought, is this a scam, or is this really a true company? So yes, that was a big learning. And then the next one was, I'm not at all, I don't do Facebook, I don't do Instagram, so I don't live my life like that. So that was very, very, very eye-opening, is how we needed to put the brand on Instagram and Facebook and all the content that we needed, and then looking at the difference between Gen Z, the millennials, the baby boomers, how differently they all interacted with different social media platforms, and how we needed to change our content accordingly. And that has been a big learning curve for me personally, because I've never had to kind of navigate my way through that industry before.
I guess there's a silver lining here, but it's not about what you know or what you don't know, but it's about how comfortable you are with the fact that you don't know what the answers to a lot of these questions. And
Yes.
Again, it goes back to the idea of courage. Do you have the courage? Do you give yourself enough time? And yeah, that's that uncertainty avoidance type of a behavior. It's a very psychological thing, I see. My background is in psychology, by the way, so perhaps I'm biased in how I see this, but it's
Yeah.
possible. But in my limited understanding of the world, I think we see the world and we behave in accordance with our nature to a certain extent. We can change it, of course, but that uncertainty tolerance, that courage, I think, is what is at play here. Yes, you don't know the answers to these questions, but do you have the mettle to say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out?
Yeah, and I definitely, I sometimes talk on entrepreneurial panels where I talk about scaling businesses. And I think if I analyze how I have been successful, it's actually acknowledging and admitting that there are certain parts of my role that I don't enjoy, or there are certain parts of my role that I don't have the knowledge to do. I think I'm probably quite good at numbers, but do I want to sit and do budgets and work out cash flow forecasting? No, I don't. So I very early on worked out what I did like doing and what I didn't like doing, and what I was good at and wasn't good at, and then had no problem surrounding myself with a team who could do that. And I think, the sign of a good leader is that you surround yourself with people. They might be more intelligent than you, or they might be, but you don't see that as a threat. You embrace that, because
There's so much to know. There are so many technical things.
Yeah.
It is impossible for a single person to be aware and be good at all of them.
Yeah. And I think now in my business, Alicia J, if I look at my team, I have a young team. I've purposely recruited people that are recently out of university that understand all the social media.
Hmm.
And I sit on calls and then I go, girls, you tell me, I've got no idea whether we should be doing video content, what the reels should look like. I know that they look at me sometimes and think, well, we work for you, but I'm just like, no, it's your generation. You need to tell me, because I don't know how all this works. So,
But
but I
that's
can
that's
give them
kind of the how
leadership.
part, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
So am I allowed to disagree or perhaps butt in with this conversation? I don't know. I don't think I
Yeah.
am because I'm the host
No,
of
go
this
on,
podcast.
please.
But I think this might the reason I'm just gonna take this unprecedented route in this podcast is
Yeah.
because I think it might be useful and because I think there are other people who might be in a similar situation. A lot of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
I think the technology end of it, the Instagrams and the
Yeah.
Facebook pixels and the UX for the website, I think these are all about the how part of that equation. The how,
Yes.
changes, and yes, we are not all very good at it, and even if we are, 5 years later, we are going to be
It's
outdated
changed again.
for everyone. But the who and the what and the why, I think, are the things that don't change. So, for example, who are you selling to? The exact persona of.
Yes.
So what changes is we need to be more exact in every type of business, I think, to whom we are selling this product to, because the internet has changed that. So I was bombarded with these advertisements on Instagram, for example, for
Hmm.
graphite wedding bands, and
Oh,
and
yes.
and with different materials, and it is very masculine, and it is I can tell it's clearly geared towards a male audience rather than a
Yes.
female audience, and that's perhaps the neglected part of the market, and now there is a demand for it because there are a lot of businesses that have popped up that do similar things, and I find myself kind of intrigued by that. I have to admit, because I've never been a fan of my wedding band, and like
Yes.
I was thinking something more childish and manly and masculine and quite
Yes.
funny. Yeah, I would opt for that. A black graphite wedding ring. I would like that. So that's kind of a discovery, and a lot of people pile on that. I think that's changed, but again, uh, I think the entrepreneurial mind you have of, okay, there's a male audience who is underserved by the market. Just your example with the aviation industry and the baked goods, right? And
Yes.
what do these people want? So that I think has stayed the same.
Yeah, no,
What do you think?
definitely. And I think that's that's what that's what I am
Mm,
passionate and creative about. During lockdown, I kind of looked at how people were. Well, some people were embracing it and some people were really suffering depending on their personal circumstances. And that's why we came up with the Bold Ring collection. So for me, I knew that after lockdown, obviously people would want to treat themselves because they'd maybe been able to save some money.
yeah.
And so the Bold Ring collection is all about a set of big gemstone rings that either a female buys for herself because she wants to treat herself to something. And we've named each ring, so for like amour, resilience, passion, they've all got, the gemstones have all been teamed up with an adjective to
Hmm.
kind of really empathize.
That's quite smart.
Um, yeah, and that's for me. And then I support the Prince's Trust. I'm really passionate about supporting youngsters coming into the workplace and helping them if they've maybe come from a slightly disadvantaged background. So the Bold Collection, 3% of the profits we donate to women, supporting women of the part of the Prince's Trust. So from a creative point of view in the collections, I definitely agree with you that you have to kind of like know what your product is, know who your market is, and I think that's the bit that I do focus on, and how we kind of market it. Then I've surrounded myself with people that knows how all the algorithms work on social
Hmm.
media.
It looks like you have all the right. It looks like it's a right combination.
Yes.
And for the people who are listening in our audience, So it's aliciajdiamonds.com if you'd like to visit the site. And it's really interesting, the structure they have. They have a four-part for the users. Part one, getting to know you. Part two, design, or the creative part. So they transform
Yes.
ideas from consultation into a detailed presentation with mood boards, showcasing different designs to appeal to your style. Part three, selection. And part four, the crafting. I think this is a quite interesting model. I've never seen anything like this. I don't know if there's a market for it, which is going to determine the success of this, but I definitely think it's interesting. So my final question to you is, are you growing as a team? And perhaps with that, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, no, we are growing as a team. And for me, my leadership style is very much about empathy and intuition. A lot of my business in the past, business decisions has been based on intuition. So it is really important to me that when I recruit for my team, that I recruit somebody who I know I can see that they've got passion inside of them. So I'd like to say that my team are young, but I know that they're all passionate and that they're all creative. So if I do interview people, it is very much about understanding, do they have passion? Are they creative? Because let's face it, a lot of people can come to an interview and they can walk through the door and they can like be really enthusiastic about joining your company. But for me, it's all about whether I can really see, do they network after work? Are they in for us if we were recruiting somebody as a business development manager? Can I really see that they invest time outside of the office to develop? And by that, I don't mean just professional development where they're tick boxing courses. I really need to know whether they network with other like-minded professionals, because if they're going to invest that time outside of the office, then I know that they're going to be really passionate about joining the company. And I think the other one is, some people come and they're looking for a particular work style. And because I'm, as a leader, creative and passionate, I don't like have a set day of how I work. I quite often have mad ideas at night and get the team on a Teams call the next morning and say, oh, I've thought about this. What do you think about this? So if somebody wants to join and they're attracted to a particular work style, probably I might not be the type of person they'll respond well to. But if they're looking for a place where they can live out their passion, then that's the type of recruit that we would look for to join the team. And over the years, I've employed lots of people, and some of them have worked out and some of them haven't worked out. But I definitely like to empower people to use their intuition to solve problems as well. But it isn't all textbook, and there isn't a way of doing anything. It's about, let's kind of maneuver our way. And the world does, Ozan, throw up things that no business, how many years ago would we have thought we've just had to live through a pandemic for 2 years? So you can't always have a business and say this is the way it's going to be. You have to be able to maneuver it and go with the bad times and the good times. And I think my leadership style, because it is very empathetic and driven by intuition, helps me to navigate the good times and the bad times.
I think this was a wonderful chat, and a few really interesting themes that we've touched upon. One of them is courage. The other one is focusing in a time of incredible high-paced change, focusing on things that do not perhaps change, that are constant, such as the things that you've mentioned, and the flexibility that has. So overall, I think this has been an incredible chat for the people who are listening. Hopefully they get some value out of this. Thank you so much for joining in.
Yes, thank you very much, Ozan. It's been lovely talking to you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.